Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. Well, come on in here and sit down with me, and let's get yourself something hot or cold to drink. And we're going to open our Bibles up today to Psalm 7. We're in Psalm 7, and today is a good day because we're going to start us off here with a little history. We have another one of those sections in the Scripture that, here in the Psalms rather, that an introduction that gives us history of the Psalm, something that we didn't know that we didn't know. And so we come here to Psalm 7, and the introduction here says, a Shiggaion of David, which he sang to the Lord concerning the words of Cush the Benjamite. All right, so you notice several things here. We have Shiggaion, which is another musical notation perhaps, or a type of a psalm. That's what I'm going to land on. It's a type of psalm. He sings this to the Lord concerning the words of Cush the Benjamite. Who's Cush the Benjamite? That's, of course, the big question, right? So if you go back and you look in 2 Samuel chapter 18, 2 Samuel chapter 18 records the battle and the death of Absalom. So David doesn't go out into the battle with his men. They go out and they take care of this themselves. Now, when the battle's over, two men come running back to report to David. The first man is asked the question, what happened to Absalom? And he doesn't know. The second man shows up, and this is Cush. He's the Benjamite here who runs to tell David the tidings of the battle. So he comes in, and Cush came in, and he says, tidings, my Lord. This is 2 Samuel chapter 18, verse 31. He says, tidings, my Lord, the king, for the Lord hath avenged thee this day of all them that rose up against thee. All right, verse 32. So the king asks Cushi, the Benjamite, the young man, he says, is Absalom safe? And Cush says to him, the enemies of my Lord, the king, and all that rise against thee to do thee hurt, be as that young man is. So David knows that when he said that, be as that young man is, that Absalom is dead. So the king was much moved, it says there in verse 33, and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And of course, this is that moment when he's crying out, Absalom, Absalom, oh my son Absalom. So the king is brokenhearted about this. He doesn't know how to react, how to respond. Well, in that moment, at some point during that moment, when he's up in that upper room above the gate, perhaps he's writing this psalm. Now, the word Shiggaion here means a psalm of deep emotion. That's at least one way to translate this or to look at this, that it's a psalm of deep emotion, which we can understand when David gets the news that his son is dead and he wanted his son kept alive, that he would be moved like this. And notice verses 1 and 2. Let's just go ahead and jump right into the text. Verses 1 and 2, Psalm 7. O Lord my God, in thee do I put my trust. Save me from all them that persecute me, and deliver me, lest he tear my soul like a lion, rending it in pieces, while there is none to deliver. Well, now, so we have verses 1 and 2. You'll notice that this is a prayer, O Lord my God, but it's also a song. But it's also a historical moment, patching in some information to a moment that we didn't know that this happened until we come in to read the psalm, and David's writing this about this moment. And so it's a psalm of deep emotion, and where does David go? He goes to the Lord. He says, I put my trust in you. And so David's saying to the Lord there, this is this beautiful, confident confession, in thee do I put my trust. And then he says, save me. Save me from all them that persecute me. All them that persecute me. Well, he's been persecuted, hasn't he? Absalom raised up a huge army against David. And he says, deliver me. So salvation and deliverance are on the table. David's requesting that. But notice in verse 2, something changes. He says, lest he tear my soul like a lion. Now in verse 1, it was all them that persecute me. Now in verse 2, it's he, lest he tears my soul. So all them that persecute me, we can understand the all them because it's Absalom and all the men that he raised up. What about verse 2, lest he? Well, he could be talking about Joab. Joab comes to him in chapter 19, and he goes up to David in the upper room above the gate, and he lets him have it because he's crying about Absalom, and he's upset, Joab is, that all these men have forfeited their lives for David, and now David's upset that this young whippersnapper's been killed that challenged David's throne, and all these people have died for it, and David's upset about it. This begins the problem. Well, the problem actually with Joab began earlier, but I think it continues it and magnifies the problem with Joab. But also this could be Satan. He tears my soul like a lion. Peter tells us in 1 Peter chapter 5 that Satan prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So, it could be that Satan is behind all this, and the satanic influence, the evil influence to kick a man while he's down. Where does that come from? Well, that comes from the hand of our enemy. And so, tearing my soul like a lion, rending it in pieces, while there is none to deliver. That is, no human, because remember, he's asked God for deliverance there in verse 1. Save me from all them that persecute me, deliver me. And there's none to deliver, he says in verse 2, because there's no deliverance amongst men. There's no permanent, eternal, lasting deliverance. Men can't do that. Only God can do that. And that's what David needs right now. He's in a tender spot, and he's being persecuted while he is suffering the loss of his child. Well, join me tomorrow. We're going to look at verses 3 and 4 here in Psalm 7. So I hope you'll join me then here on Daily Dose Radio.